Good afternoon. Welcome to the Next About Essential series. These are topical, engaging, and technical webinars on wealth and wellness by leaders in the private client world. I'm Lottie, founder of the Jura Society network and private client consultancy focusing on women, wealth, and well-being. I'm really pleased to welcome Anna Joss, founder and CEO of Prism the Gift Fund, to provide an overview of donor-advised funds and their role in structuring philanthropic giving. This afternoon, Anna's going to discuss the ease of use of a DAF and how they work and why they are the way forward for philanthropic giving in the sector. Anna will highlight some of the interesting projects also that Prism have supported over the years. As always, please ask any questions in the chat and we'll have time for the Q&A at the end. The session will be recorded and we hope you enjoy this as much as we do. So I'm just going to bring Anna on now. Hello, Anna, over to you.
Hi, Lottie. Thank you so much to Lottie and the Jura Society. So I'm going to talk a bit about donor advised funds and Prism the Gift Fund and what are they and how they can help administer someone's giving and why I think they are the way forward in the United Kingdom. There are certain things we follow well in America, and in America, donor advised funds are very, very successful. So what is a donor advised fund? We are a UK registered charity. And actually, what we do is administer the giving of individuals, groups, foundations, making significant gifts tax effectively all over the world. Why are DAFs growing? Really, given the increasing rules and regulations that the Charity Commission insist on when you create your own foundation, grant-making foundation or operational charity, it's hard, it's tough doing that oneself. One needs trained trustees, you need policies such as safeguarding, data protection. And in the end, an individual or a group want the joy of giving or the joy of creating a project without necessarily the constant worry of ensuring the rules and regulations are adhered to. And that's what we do extremely well. We're expert administrators, we're efficient, we're bespoke, we're entrepreneurial, and we take away all that back office on giving and really look at the compliance and governance. So let me go into a bit more detail. I saw almost 20 years ago these structures in America. And just to give you a sense of size, donor advised fund assets in America are something like $270 billion. In the UK, it's about 2.7 billion sterling. So much smaller, but growing. And there are a number of great donor advised funds in the market now. Prism the Gift Fund being one and being a leader. So an individual comes to us and says, I don't want to create my own grant-making foundation, or even if I do, what are the benefits of actually using a donor advised fund instead? And so they open an account. They can call it the Joe Bloggs Foundation. It can appear like a foundation. It's an account at Prism. People can give cash, shares, property. All of these assets come with UK charitable tax breaks. In addition, we have something called Prism Offshore, which could be applicable to resident non-dom. We have white label Prism America. So all of these structures just ease the way in which someone can give. Our objective is to get more money out into the charitable sector. And what we're providing is that infrastructure. So Joe Bloggs Foundation is created at Prism, and our client gets a relationship manager. It's a very personalized service. And we respond very swiftly to any request from that individual to get money out anywhere around the world. In fact, because of our entrepreneurial spirit, not only do we support charities, not-for-profits, social enterprises, but we try and push boundaries. So, for example, we had a client that wanted to support a profit-making company making bionic arms. That's quite hard from a charity, but we brought in charity lawyers, that's what we sometimes do, to create a very clear grant agreement whereby the money could be given to this profit-making company, restricted with a clear public benefit for a number of children that needed a bionic arm. That is the entrepreneurial spirit of Prism. Another client who wanted to look at regeneration of Grimsby and Humberside in the north of England. and had got Arup, the design company, involved to do stage 1 analysis. We were able to support Arup from his donor advised fund to do a sort of stage 1 analysis. So we are experts around navigating the complexities of giving. The old notion that if I create my little charity on the side, it's easy, I'll run it with a family. It just doesn't exist anymore because the rules and regulations are tough. And so that is the beauty of what Prism is doing, is enabling someone to still give, and we'll deal with that back office. Back in 2015, one of the banks referred a client a tragedy. Their baby had been killed, and they wanted to create a memorial fund and raise money from friends and family. And at the same time, the World Food Programme knocked on our door and said, we're actually owned by the UN in Rome. We're not a UK entity. Could you create a vehicle whereby we can raise money tax effectively from lots of donors online through text in time for the World Rugby, which was October 2015. And ITV was sponsoring it, the government were matching it pound for pound, and Prism created that structure. And then at the same time, in October 2015, the refugee crisis in Europe broke, and lots of the refugee groups found their way to Prism. So the collective fund, and we are actually the only donor advised fund in the UK that also operate this collective fund, means we can run a project where lots of donors can contribute. So it could be a memorial fund. We do get lots of tragedies. So, for example, Grace O'Malley Kumar, who was one of the women killed in the Nottingham University stabbing last August, her family have a collective fund at Prism. They can quickly raise money in her memory. We have British Friends of structures. The Museum of Modern Art is St Paul de Vence. We are their British charity. Do they need to create another operational UK charity? No. And given the length of time it can take the Charity Commission, up to some 15 months sometimes, and the banking system another year to grant a bank account, this is a much more efficient and immediate and responsive way of supporting the charitable sector. Just another really interesting example of the collective fund. We can respond very quickly to emergency relief, to Ukraine, for example, to an earthquake in Morocco, to during COVID. There was an amazing chef called Leon Arts who created a project called Kitchens with Compassion. And Wembley Stadium gave him their kitchens because they were closed. And he made 625,000 meals for the NHS and vulnerable operating under Prism's regulatory roof in that first year of COVID. He wouldn't have been able to do that by creating his own operational charity. He raised the money, he made the food, we bought the tomatoes and vegetables and paid the bills and got them shipped to Wembley, and we paid the bill here. So it's a great, again, innovative, immediate, responsive structure. We deal with climate change issues as well in the collective fund space. In fact, the collective funds are very open, very public, listed on our website. So you can see the range of work that Prism is doing through all the different collective funds, and they are very, very varied, and it depends on someone's interests, of what's going on. The donor advised fund is family-led, individual-led. It could be a corporate company who says, I'm not creating my own foundation, I'm going to run it under Prism Gift Fund. So each of those donors are very different as to what they care about, what they're giving to. We do bring our donors together. We run 2 or 3 big events every year. So, for example, we just had an event on women in philanthropy, really bringing together a number of female groups, looking at how to support women in the marketplace. One before that looked at human rights and philanthropy. Baroness Elena Kennedy chaired it. Matrix Chambers, which is a barrister's chambers dealing with human rights, is a client of Prism through a collective fund. They again talked about their work. We've had issues on climate change with really cutting edge collective funds talking about their work. We have the Founder of Eden Project, Tim Smith as our chair. So you can see we vary massively because our donors have totally different interests. We're agnostic. We're here to make giving easier, to facilitate their choice, their interests. We sometimes get very interesting legacies. I recently had a conversation. We get lots of referrals from the banks, the law firms who've done the due diligence on PRISM over the years. And one of the referrals was from a bank saying, I have a client on death, he wants to give 100 million. So I said, well, that's great, but how about giving in lifetime? I always talk about my mother's terminology, warm money and cold money. And you will gain more than you give. So start your journey in life, and a legacy should be as well as, not instead of. Because the philanthropy piece opens up someone's world. So with that individual of the 100 million, he wanted on death just to give it to 6 charities very immediately, very swiftly. And that's quite a complex thing to do because, I mean, he was quite young, his wife was even younger. So, 30 years' time, let's say, when they passed, who knows whether those charities they've selected 30 years earlier will be fit for purpose, whether they can absorb that kind of level of a grant. And that will be up to the trustees of PRISM to make that assessment. And if not, to perhaps give it over a number of years. We'll look at multi-year grants, but look at reporting. Has the charity used it as they said they would? Is it an effective use of money? So I think when people get involved in philanthropy, they don't always think about all the issues and the complexities, and the donor advised fund world can just manage that and also highlight some of the challenges, but then take away the rules and regulations, and we just quietly deal with that and allow the underlying client to really benefit from interesting different charities that they may come across. We do soft introductions because we come across so many smart charities, and if it falls into the interest area of a client, we'll absolutely refer them in. And I guess why did I start PRISM the Gift Fund? And it's almost 20 years ago. In 2025, we are going to celebrate the impact and output of PRISM. And at that point, we're really looking at $1 billion of donation income and distribution of over $500 million around the world. And we have assets of about, again, $500 million. So I did about a year and a half's worth of research in the early 2000s, looking at America and looking at the structures in America. And apart from one very large government backed donor advised fund, there wasn't really anyone targeting the mid-upper end of the market, and that's PRISM's market. That's who we target and work with. And it took time. It like, I'm sure lots of people listening are entrepreneurs or business people or create their own structures. And it's hard graft. It takes time to build one's own entity. It took a lot of knocking on doors to really build our relationship with the private client intermediary world of banks and law firms. I'm pleased that they refer in a lot today and they do know us well. But we present a lot, we do a lot of lunch and learns just on the benefits of giving as well and how the tax works and the beauty of a donor advised fund. But yes, it's been hard work building the operation over the years, but we can see now the fruit of that hard work, because we can really see all the money getting out around the world and the impact that we've had around the world. And I guess, not everything the UK follows Re-America is good or helpful, but I think and I hope maybe the donor advised fund concept is a positive thing that the United Kingdom can take from America. And often in the philanthropy space, we're sort of 10, 20 years behind America. in how we do major donor fundraising or in some of our infrastructure. So I think if America's donor advised funds are such an integral part of philanthropy in America, I think that is where we're going to head in the United Kingdom. And one of the other pieces that is happening now in the United Kingdom is in the corporate space and in the banking world. They are trying to work out how do we get involved in the philanthropy space, and should we be creating our own donor advised funds, or should we white label under a donor advised fund that exists? So it's no longer, it may or may not be relevant for the client. It's now, again, the language of America. You may have, your bank account, your ISA, your SIP, and then you would have your donor advised fund. That will become the language, I hope, of the United Kingdom going forward. How absolutely essential they will be as a vehicle for people involved in philanthropy. I think one of the other challenges going on in the United Kingdom right now is obviously the cost of living crisis, government cuts, and lots of charities have had a lot of cuts, and how they're going to survive and who's going to fill that gap. And I've been involved in discussions with the Charity Commission, who really want to understand what is the role of major donors, and something that we've been talking about for the last 20 years. They can fill the gap, and how do we encourage people to give and give more? And that is one of the additional issues that PRISM and we talk about, because our mission is to get more money to the sector. So in effect, a lot of people feel major donors are the last people standing. There's been talks about, should there be a minister of philanthropy? Could we encourage that? It's quite challenging. We've just had a change of government. Over 20 years, we've talked to different successive governments, different successive people. Unfortunately, philanthropy is often at the bottom of the pile. Maybe it's not quite so much at the bottom of the pile now because of the government cuts, and they need to rely on donor advised funds and their clients to encourage them to fill that gap. So I think there is movement. I think there is change. We've tried to encourage the financial sector to really, really embrace philanthropy in their language when they talk to clients. More and more do. It's not compulsory. Maybe at some point the Financial Conduct Authority will ensure there is a module on philanthropy, but we're not there yet. And I think in another 10 years, this whole world would have moved even further. And I guess, things like the Jura Society, that is also bringing this to the attention of everyone, talking about it, encouraging philanthropy, is, just helps people navigate this world. And, hopefully a lot of you listening may or may not have heard of donor advised funds and will now wonder, maybe, could this be a vehicle for you? So, we're always around. Hello, Lottie. We're always around to answer questions, to talk, to navigate, to explain who and what we are.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Anna. And I think as well, the incredible things that you have done and your insight, A, as an entrepreneur, but B, as somebody who is really facilitating the future of philanthropy and doing it for a significant amount of time. I mean, congratulations, 20 years in business is absolutely incredible. So I just wanted to dip into a bit of that and just find, what are some of the challenges that you have actually faced getting to where you are now in business?
I think, like setting up any business, it's hard graft, and there's lots of no's, and not to take things too personally, and that if someone goes to a competitor or indeed just says no, it's not that we're bad or we're not right. It's just not a right fit. So it's being resilient, and that these things, these things take time. And when you create something, you've got to build the building blocks. You can't just sort of wave a wand and create a whole structure and a whole building. It takes time. It takes many years, and it's critical to have the building blocks. And then the piece that I'm probably not very good at, and it's really important to do, is to take a step back sometimes and go, hang on a minute, look at the timeline and look at actually what we have created. And I remember when I first created Prism, the Gift Fund, I didn't think, oh, it must, my aim is $1 billion. No, my aim was to just create a structure and slowly build clients. And so I think that's the other thing is I never thought Prism would be what it is today. That wasn't the aim. The aim was to create a service, and it works. And the objective actually set in 2005 remains exactly the same today. It works.
And I think that was really testament to being a mission-led business as well. It's not really the how, but it's the why that drives it. And you can figure out the how by working with the best people and having all of these no's to help you to filter actually what your yes is, which is fantastic and brilliant. What do you reckon some of the predictions might look like for the future of philanthropy in that case?
Yeah, so I there are groups of us. There used to be something called the Philanthropy Advisors Forum, Philanthropy Review, groups looking at the marketplace, navigating government, looking at the future. I wonder if some of the tax could be simplified. I mean, that has been a 20-year conversation. We haven't succeeded yet. Maybe that will change. There's something in America called charity remainder trusts. Maybe that's something that can be brought in here, which would be another structure quite interesting, because sometimes the piece that holds an individual back is, what if I need this money in the future? I don't know how much I can give away. What happens if I need, if I get very ill or I need? And so there are two ways of dealing with this. One is often to say to a client, well, first of all, let's give you till 120. Let's give your kids, if they're going to live till 120. Let's give you a few houses abroad, a yacht. Let's give your children houses. And we'll by process of deduction, wow, you're still going to be left with 30 million. So what are you waiting for? Just begin. So that's the encouragement piece, is really, to look at whatever happens. The planning, beginning that journey. But then, I think the government will eventually look at some of these other pieces. Maybe the tax, the charity remainder trust, which allows someone to benefit from income every year, even though they've given to a charity. That's the American structure. Maybe they will consider that. Maybe the FCA will confirm that philanthropy has to be part of the education of the investment management sector. It will become, like America's standard language. We're not there yet, but I think it may happen. And because we have a cost of living crisis, because, where is this gap going to be filled? If it is major donors, one needs to learn how to navigate them. One of my issues in the charity sector itself, if you look at a lot of very large charities who've been very good historically at direct mail, at government funding, are not great at major donor fundraising. A very small percentage of their budget comes from major donors. So lots of fundraisers just are not trained. They don't know how to navigate in this country major donors. I always talk about in America, let's say you go to university in America, you walk through the door and you're tapped. So by the time you graduate, you're in a long line. I don't know how long it took my university, 20, 30 years to contact me for, to consider making a donation. It's very different in the United Kingdom. So the fundraisers in charities have a lot to learn. And that piece could also, I think, through education, change the way we navigate major donors. I mean, we're never going to be as open, as America, in the way we talk about what we give and how we give it, and and that's not necessarily nice either, but the positive things we can draw from there and try and bring in here.
I think that's brilliant. And have there been any shifts, do you think, in the last 20 years with how charities are going about with actually their organisation? Because I think sometimes there's a lot of pushback, people being hesitant to actually give to charities directly because they think that their infrastructure is not efficient in terms of how they're spending their money, etc. Do you ever see these kind of things coming up, and like that they're actually changing?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there has always been this notional, not the notional, real concept that as a charity, your overheads must be a certain percentage, and you shouldn't be spending too much money on administration. And I was referred to a great TED talk in 2013 by I think he's called Nick Pelota. I'm not sure if that's his name. Anyway, he turns it on its head and he says, no. If you pay your fundraising director and your marketing director really well, the chances are that charity is actually going to do better and going to raise more money and ultimately will be a more efficient operation. So again, there's a challenge back to donors to say, well, hang on a minute. Why? Yes, ultimately, charities are there to get money out to the projects that they support or the goal and the objectives that they're supporting. But if you don't have a good infrastructure and good staff, you won't run efficiently. So there's definitely a big pushback on all of that. That actually you need to spend money to raise money and the output will be better. So I think that notion is changing. And look, there are still a lot of charities. There are 157,000 charities. 80% have incomes of under £100,000. That's a lot, and it's probably not efficient. The Charity Commission here have a duty to, if someone applies for a grant, they've got to have a very good reason, apply to be a charity, they have to have a very good reason not to give them charitable status. It's kind of the reverse. So I think, it's probably just not sustainable having so many charities. Competition is good, but again, maybe there needs to be more mergers. Certainly Prism's collective fund mechanism takes away the burden for a lot of people, particularly when they begin their journey. Sometimes we incubate them and they are eventually, when they're ready and of a significant size, can then become their own charity. So I think that piece probably needs to be looked at. If the money is not there to support 157,000 charities, there needs to be some consolidation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, on a global scale, if you've got charities operating in different jurisdictions, different, cultures, all of those kind of things, do you ever find that can make things a little bit difficult, perhaps, when you are giving?
Yeah. And, sometimes we'll have a client will say, it's fine, it's an American charity, just make a gift there. It's not fine. Because when we send money overseas, we must apply it according to UK charitable law. So UK charitable law has broadened out in 2012 from 4 charitable aims to 13, which was the first very significant change since 1601. But UK charitable law doesn't really get involved in politics. I mean, it's quite grey when charities can get involved in politics. Certainly not around changing a law. Around education maybe. It can be more flexible in America, depending on the kind of charity definition a charitable entity has in America. So we must apply it according. It must be very, very clear when we send money overseas how it's being utilised, with clear proposals, budgets, reporting. People don't realize the complexities of that as well, and what that means.
Which is where you come in.
Where we come in, and we have an increasing expertise amongst our team here on navigating all of that and making it easy and understanding the compliance, the governance. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of the team's knowledge, increasing knowledge around all of that and knowing how to navigate it all.
That's brilliant. So let's go on to something a little bit lighter. I know you've got some really fun hobbies to take you off the steam a little bit, off the boil when you are an incredibly successful entrepreneurial woman. Tell us about what you do to actually relax.
Well, I do something called slalom mono water skiing. So that is one ski on the water, and you've got to get around these buoys in the water. It's a very focused sport. You're literally on the water for about 12-15 minutes for any one session, and if you want another session, your body needs about an hour to recover. So it's very demanding on your body, and even within those 12 minutes, every time you do one set of the lake, you rest and then you set off again. So it's a very, very demanding, and means you cannot think about anything else. So for me, people talk about meditation. It is like it's like a very
physical meditation,
fast-paced meditation, because you're really, really focused on trying to achieve.
God.
Staying upright, getting around the buoys, the speed of the boat increases. So it's a very, very focused sport, but it's great. So it gets me away from everyday challenges, and it's a great way for about 5-6 months of the year, whilst it's open through our so-called summer, to to really take time out.
That's fab. But how did you get into that? Sorry, I'm going to pick up this because it's so niche.
Yeah, I did a tiny bit of it as a teenager, and then in my 20s, I think what was often a Club Med, and just literally spent all the time
amazing
at the water ski dock. And I thought, this is fabulous. And then I learned to get up on one ski in Lee Valley, which is now closed for pollution.
Nice.
Nice. I would go for 2 months, sort of every week, just trying to say, okay, I'm eventually going to get it. And eventually I did get it. But yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Your core must be pretty strong.
It does make you strong. It definitely makes you strong. So I'm very good at lugging suitcases. Yeah, having just come back from a break, I think everyone was amazed how I could just throw a suitcase onto a conveyor belt and lug it around.
I'm fine. I can do this. Oh no, that's brilliant. Oh, I love that. Okay, well, I think I'm going to have to come along to one of those sessions with you at one point. I think my coordination is embarrassingly bad, but no, that sounds so much fun. Well, thank you so much. And again, we're all going to keep our eye out for your 20th anniversary next year. Absolutely fantastic work that you're doing. It's testament to the importance of it and the mission that you are solving as well, which I love.
Lottie, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me and Prism the Gift Fund into your world. We're really grateful as well.
Thank you so much. And for anybody else tuning in, if you do have any questions for Anna, please do get in touch either directly with Anna or myself. I'll be happy to connect you and continue the conversation. But that's all for now, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Lottie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.